but I will agree with you 1,000% that it's almost impossible to over post. You know, people say, well, like, aren't you worried about, you know, over posting and people getting sick of you and stuff like that? It's just like, it just can't happen. I mean, there's so much content out there, and if people see you for a second that they don't want to, they'll just swipe by you onto the next thing. And I've seen it on our personal page and on our Sweet Baby Ray's catering page, where we can post, you know, 3, 4, 5 times a day, and it's just the amount of at-bats, you know, like Gary says, you just have to get up there and keep swinging.
But then, you know, kind of went down the marketing avenue of that. So stayed in LA for quite a while, worked in television and film in LA, editing and directing, cutting films, cutting documentaries, cutting commercials, learning the intersection of product placement and advertising in media, you know, itself, whether it be commercials or motion pictures or, you know, whatever, TV shows. And just absolutely fell in love with it. Went down into the television world for quite a while. Worked for the Outdoor Channel, which, for anyone who's not familiar, is a hunting, fishing, off-road, redneck lifestyle, if you will, television channel. And then that brought me from California out to Oklahoma, where we live now. So stayed in that for quite a while, and then I guess 5 years ago, made the jump into marrying back up barbecue and marketing.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Deuce Raymond podcast. Today, I got kicked out of my office and we're in the home office now. We had some computer problems, so I'm here with a good friend of mine, Nick Parsons. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. We had a phone call the other week, and man, you know a lot about marketing and barbecue, two things I'm super interested in, so I'm glad you hopped on the podcast so we could talk more about it.
Absolutely, man. It's a huge passion of ours, and you know, we'll throw as much mud on the wall as we can.
Great. Let's start throwing. Why don't you tell everybody about how you kind of got into? Did you start in barbecue or did you start in marketing, and how that went?
That's a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing, to be honest with you. So I've always, from a young age, always kind of had a marketing mindset, always had a sales mindset. On trying to reverse engineer how people bought, why people bought, even through, I remember middle school and high school, like that was always my favorite courses were ones that were talking about economics and like the philosophy and psychology behind buying and things like that. So went into college and studied communication and television and film in college because I wanted to be at the intersection of being able to communicate with people through multimedia in whatever avenue it was going to be, primarily through business or sales or whatever. And through the course of college, put myself through college working in various different businesses, but one of them was a barbecue restaurant. And learned and had grown up. So I grew up in, for the most part, it was a little bit back and forth, but for the most part, grew up in Southern California. So the barbecue I was exposed to was the California style blend of like Santa Maria live fire barbecue, tri-tip, you know, pork ribs, things like that. They were all live fire cowboy style, and then also mixed with, you know, we had the Baja Mexico influence being in Southern California. So. The barbecue restaurant I worked at there while I was in college was all pit barbecue, so it was a little bit more southern style pit barbecue, but it taught me how to trim briskets and how to tend fires and how to do things like that. So I'll credit, going back, I'll credit a little bit of like my dad teaching me some barbecue stuff, although honestly he wasn't a huge barbecue guy. Like we grilled all the time, but it was never a huge passion of his. It was just, you know, mom got sick of cooking in the house, so dad would throw a tri-tip on. Yeah, for sure. And we grew up, I mean, relatively, I don't want to say poor, but, you know, kind of poor. So, you know, our big, you know, for birthdays, like our big birthday meals, you know, when we were celebrating someone in the family was always tri-tip because that was steak. That was the only steak we ever had. I don't think I had a ribeye steak until I was out of college. It just wasn't, you know, anything we were exposed to. But I did learn barbecue through college. So I learned a passion for that. But then, you know, kind of went down the marketing avenue of that. So stayed in LA for quite a while, worked in television and film in LA, editing and directing, cutting films, cutting documentaries, cutting commercials, learning the intersection of product placement and advertising in media, you know, itself, whether it be commercials or motion pictures or, you know, whatever, TV shows. And just absolutely fell in love with it. Went down into the television world for quite a while. Worked for the Outdoor Channel, which for anyone who's not familiar is a hunting, fishing, off-road, redneck lifestyle, if you will, television channel. And then that brought me from California out to Oklahoma, where we live now. So stayed in that for quite a while, and then in, I guess, 5 years ago, made the jump into marrying back up barbecue and marketing. Now, for the last 10 years, we've owned a catering company, a barbecue catering company.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, it's for a couple of years, it was, I would say, close to full-time. I was still working in television broadcast at the time, but we were doing 3 or 4 decent-sized caterings. It was all barbecue, but 3 or 4 decent-sized caterings a week. Some, really big ones to, our smallest is probably 30, 40 people caterings, and we were doing 7, 8, 900 person, weddings and parties and stuff like that. So it was a blast, was a great way to put some extra money in the pocket and have some fun, in a passion kind of thing. But about 5 years ago is when I jumped and said, all right, I'm going to marry this marketing and barbecue thing up. So that's what we did, and I jumped into that full time. And started marketing a grill manufacturer here in the United States, America's oldest grill manufacturer at the time, and really was exposed to a different side of marketing in the barbecue world, because up to that point, marketing for me had been marketing my own catering services, in addition to just the other stuff I was doing in television and film. So now it was, all right, we have hard products to sell. We have physical inventory to move. We have dealer networks and wholesale networks to develop. We have multimedia to produce for commercials, for long form stuff, for short form stuff, for Black Friday sales, for Memorial Day, for all the stuff that kind of comes into when you marry up retail and barbecue and marketing and everything else. So it really kind of put the rubber to the road for me, because at that point, all the stuff that I had done in the television and film world was produce content, get it up there, hopefully people buy. I wasn't responsible for buying. It was just making sure stuff was on the air. Now it was every single day you're looking at sales numbers and going, was the strategy that I enforced last week, last month, last year effective or not? And what did we learn from it if it was not effective? And, rinse, repeat, rinse, throw out, whatever it is. So that really kind of put the rubber to the road for me.
Well, that's huge, because, a lot of guys, in similar position of what I'm doing is trying to put content out there and then convert it some way into some meaningful sales or attention or a mixture of the two. And it's not always easy to draw a straight line. We put out a lot of content. We get a lot of impressions. And I know that has something to do with our success. We've, increased our sales and stuff like that, but it's really hard to say what is actually moving the needle. Is it the truck driving down the road? Is it the TikTok video, the Instagram reel, or is it the phone call that the sales team is making? So there's a lot of different touch points there. How do you go about explaining how to funnel that focus and understanding whether the content you're putting out is really converting into sales?
Yeah, that's probably the number one sticking point because we're in this transition here too. We've not that we haven't been in a digital age for a while, but digital marketing, digital advertising, really utilizing digital resources and media in business, having the conversion coming from billboards and newspaper and, coupons and things like that into the world we're in, we still have this like 1 foot in the back, on the dock, where it's like, well, I need to see what my ROAS is, what my return on investment is, right? And when someone comes in with a coupon that they clipped out of the newspaper, I know exactly where that person came from, and I can equate that to the newspaper. In digital advertising, you can do that because you can follow the travel journey down, right? But when you're doing content creation itself, it's a lot more of a brand awareness situation than it is a direct sales. And when you have brand awareness, it's really hard to draw a straight line between I invested $2,000 and I made $10,000 on that investment when you're talking about brand awareness. So brand awareness is a little bit more of a, you have to go wide and as broad as you possibly can. And the more you learn your audience, the better effect you're going to have. But being able to draw a line between, a direct piece of media that you produce in the brand awareness space, and whether that actually made you money is unbelievably difficult. So honestly, the best way to do it is to almost over-treat it. And what I mean by that is most people don't create enough content. You know, like I look behind you on the book that's on your bookshelf behind you, Day Trading Attention. I'm a big Gary Vee guy too. You know, Gary Vee's whole thing was saying if you're not creating 30 pieces of content a day, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
You have to be and this is hard, guys, like in the business world, because most people are not just out there to create content. Like, you have a business to run, right? But you have to, someone on your team, something has to be flooding the market with good quality content. Now, I don't say good quality like it's got to be studio produced or anything, but it has to be on message. It's got to be to the right people. It's got to feel right. It's got to feel organic. That type of quality content, you have to flood the market with that type of content in order for there to be enough brand awareness. So when someone says, I need catering services, who do they call, right? Well, they call you, because they see enough of you. They see behind the curtain. They know your personality. They know all this stuff. You've essentially just beat out your competition. Well, the way you beat out your competition was by being way more present than your competition ever was. So can you draw a direct line? I posted a video and I made $1 from it? No. But what you can draw a direct line is I'm continually posting content and I'm seeing my monthly revenue go up.
Right.
And unless you have the 15 other gears and levers that you're pulling at the time, realistically, the content game is a really good piece of the pie when it comes to seeing that. But you still just don't have direct numbers on it at this point.
Yeah, it's really tough. But I will agree with you 1,000% that it's almost impossible to overpost. You know, people say, well, like, aren't you worried about, you know, overposting and people getting sick of you and stuff like that? It's just like, it just can't happen. I mean, there's so much content out there, and if people see you for a second that they don't want to, they'll just swipe by you onto the next thing. And I've seen it on our personal page and on our Sweet Baby Ray's catering page, where we can post, you know, 3, 4, 5 times a day, and it's just the amount of at-bats, you know, like Gary says. You just have to get up there and keep swinging and
get your reps in.
Get your reps in, for sure.
Yeah, well, the other component to that too, Deuce, is, you know, at some point, let me put it this way. When I'm talking with companies about like their email or their SMS marketing strategy, and they're going like, well, we lost 15 subscribers last month. I'm like, that's great. And they're like, why is that good? It's like, because that's 15 people that didn't want to hear from you anymore, and now you're not paying to market to them. Right? That was not your ideal client. Well, copy paste that into the content game. If you're posting, you know, let's just say you're doing great and you're posting 10 or 15, 20 pieces of content a day, whether it be stories or reels or whatever, right? And someone's like, I'm seeing too much of Deuce, man. I'm going to unfollow him. Great. He was never your ideal client anyway. Like, you want to get the guy who cannot get enough of you, and every single time you post something, guys like, sweet, he posted again. That's your ideal client. That's the one that you want following you. So don't waste your time and energy and effort trying to get people to stick around if it's not going to jive with what your content strategy is.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So, like, in the hardcore marketing world, what do they think about trying to find your ideal client? Can you just talk a little bit about that avatar situation and just give me your high level, and maybe we'll get into a little nitty gritty even of what ours is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an entire strategy. We call it an avatar and brand strategy that I walk every single one of my clients through. It's about 7 pages long. And it starts off with just very basic information about who is your current buyer and who is your ideal buyer. And by ideal buyer, I mean this is obviously, you know, all of our ideal buyer is the guy who's going to give us the most amount of money, right? And it's not just about that one-time purchase. It's about the LTV, the lifetime value of that client. So if you're selling a $5,000 product and that product is going to last 20 years, well, then realistically, your lifetime value on that client, unless you have other products around it, is about $5,000. You can't guarantee he's coming back in 20 years. And even if he does, he's not going to be the majority, right? You're not going to maintain 100% of your client. Now, if you sell a $20 product that is, you know, or you know, knock it down, a $10 seasoning jar, right? And the hope is that that person uses that seasoning and they fall in love with it, and they're going to have to buy another jar in 2 or 3 weeks. And that person is an avid barbecuer. Well, you say, okay, well, they're going to be buying 2 jars every 6 weeks. Do the mathematic on it. Okay, this guy's lifetime value, this guy is going to be, you know, say $500, $1,000, $1,500. So part of that is breaking down and saying, what do I have to sell and how frequently do I want someone to buy it? And then when you identify what's my key thing I want to sell, because some of us have, door busters, right? Some of us just get them in the door. When I was selling barbecue grills, we had a grill that was it was a high-end grill company. We had a grill that was a sub $500 grill. And that grill was good for camping and tailgating. And deer camp, fishing, whatever it is, right? But there's a lot of people who wanted to buy that $1,500, $2,500 grill, and they just couldn't afford it. But they could get in at that $500 price point. I knew that grill was a doorbuster, right? That was the gateway drug to get them in. That was not going to be the last purchase they had. So my ideal client was not the guy who bought that $500 grill. My ideal client is the guy who's going to buy the $2,500 grill. But the ideal client could be the guy who bought the $500, and now I just got to work him through the system, right? So part of identifying that avatar is knowing who can afford the product that I want to sell the most, right? If you're in a catering service, you don't want to be selling a bunch of 25-person caterings. Unless it's weekly and it's just money in the bank and rolls in, right? Like you want those caterings where they're like, I don't even care what the price per person is. Like this just has to go off without a hitch, and it's got to be the perfect menu, and it's got to be all the high-end stuff. I want ribeyes for 500 people, or in your world in catering, like I want chicken, but I want to charge you at the ribeye price, right? Like I want high-end chicken.
Yeah.
Keep your costs down. But if you're going out, say your ideal client is it's the $10,000 catering ticket, right? Well, then what you have to start doing is you build out this avatar is where does that person who has a $10,000 catering, invoice, where do they live? Where do they work in, right? Is it the guy who's got some buddies and they're going to get together for his retirement? Maybe. More than likely, it's probably going to be that car dealership that's down the road that employs 1,500 people and they want to cater 3 times a year, and they don't even care what the bill is at this point, right? Right. Maybe it's the medical office, and they got 2,000 people working in their medical office, and they want to offer a fully catered lunch 3 or 4 times a year. Okay, well, their lifetime value, even over the course of that year, is going to be 30, 40 grand. So once you start to identify who that ideal client is, then you start really digging down and saying, okay, well, if I think that person who can afford that service is in X, Y, and Z industries. And in the area that I service, say take the catering world, within probably 30 to 40 miles of where I'm located, there's only so many areas that can house people who have that type of income or that type of business. So it's almost, just pushing them through the funnel and filtering out all the people that don't meet that, avatar. And, to our world, I even take my customers down to the point where we now know what this guy's name is. We know what his annual income is. We know if he's married. We know if he's got kids, how many kids he's got. I know what he likes to do on the weekends. If I'm, if I'm working with a grill manufacturer and, this is let's just take that, camping grill, right? Okay, the guy that can afford the camping grill, and it's a $500 camping grill. He's probably got a little bit of disposable income because you can also go buy a $50 camping grill, right?
Hold on one second. Let's clarify something for everybody listening, because I went through a similar process with the Deuces Wild brand.
Yeah.
And when the company I was working with started talking about everything you just said, what's their name, how much they make, where do they live, I was starting to get my eyes glazed over, like, what are these people talking about? Why is it so important to know exactly who you're talking about?
Right.
Or talking to, rather.
Yeah. So back up, you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, just say what? Just explain, like, why do you want to know that?
Here's the 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you create content, if you confuse, you lose. And if you're not talking to an exact person, if you're talking to the crowd, most of the crowd is going to ignore you and turn around, right? So if I say, hey, you guys who like barbecue out there, there's going to be some guys like, I like barbecue. There's going to be a lot of guys who like, I follow 50,000 people who cook barbecue, whatever, I'm out. But if you, and not that we say this, but if you say, hey, Mike Smith, who lives in San Diego and makes $140,000 a year, I've got the exact product is going to solve all the problems you've been dealing with. All of a sudden, it may not be Mike Smith, but it's the guy who lives in San Diego who's got this problem, right? And now he's paying attention. What you've done is you've narrowed down your search to the people that you're actually trying to advertise to, because when we create content, some of it's for fun, but most of it's not. The reason you guys do your catering content is not just because you want to pull out a video camera and have some fun. No, you want to get in front of somebody to make some money, right? Like that's the reason any one of us are in business. The high school kid who's got the iPhone in his pocket, he's the one who wants to do it for fun. But once you get in our world, like everything we cut, whether we're overtly saying, hey, buy my product, the MyPillow guy or whatever, or whether you're, filming, you working in the, on the kitchen line, all of that serves a purpose. So when you identify that ideal avatar, and yes, you get unbelievably painfully eyes glazed over specific with that ideal avatar, it literally infiltrates every single thing you say. So I'm going to cut it and say 20 seconds short, right? If I know that my ideal avatar is this Mike Smith guy in San Diego, $140,000 a year, he works in IT, he likes to grill on the weekends, he likes to camp on the weekends, whatever it is, then when I start writing content, when I start coming up with videos that I want to film, when I come up with hooks that I want to do, and I come up with recipes that I want to, whatever, every one of those now, I'm trying to send to Mike Smith, every single one of them. It's the guy that, likes to camp on the weekend or like to fish on the weekend, and he makes this kind of income and he works in IT. It's that guy. And the reason I do that now is because he feels so specifically called out. Now we have a connection, and he's going to follow me. And because I know that he's the guy that needs my product and that I want to sell my product to, I'm now talking to my ideal guy. I'm not advertising my services in San Diego to, little Karen, who's 19 years old and she's a college student in College Station. She may see my content. She doesn't care. I want to talk to the guy that actually has the money that he wants to give me.
Mm-hmm. That's so smart. I mean, it makes so much sense now. And after going through the exercise myself, it really helps us dial in our content and who we're talking to and why we're producing the content we're producing.
For sure.
I think that's so important. That's something that, I just didn't think of before. Like, I always thought of more of a broader picture that we want to market to everybody.
Yeah. Right.
And it just makes so much more sense. And it took some convincing for me to really understand why, but now it does. And a lot you brought up Gary Vee, but in some of his content, he'll bring up that very, he calls what does he call them? Cohorts. So he'll say, he'll produce certain specific content for this cohort, depending on their age, race, where they live, everything. And especially on YouTube, I think he talks about putting that content out on YouTube pre-roll. It's very interesting, and there's so much that goes into it. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, and that's why there's guys like you out there to help other people. One thing I'll say about your content, it comes off. I really understand your background now with the film industry and everything, because even the way you look here on the podcast. I mean, very professional, zipped up, buttoned down, and I think that doing what you're doing, that's what you have to portray. You have to portray the confidence and the understanding that you know what you're talking about, and you got to, walk the walk. And you definitely do that with your content online.
Appreciate that.
And it comes across very professional, and that you can help, and you look like a barbecue guy too, so that probably helps.
The beard helps, I used to be a lot bigger, and I looked more like a barbecue guy. Now I've lost some weight, and guys are like, man, I don't know if you still fit the genre.
Yeah, I would same with that situation for me too. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, we're kind of heading down that path, but something that we still struggle with is marketing a service-based industry, because we're in a specific location. When you're doing a barbecue product or even like a book or a course, you can target anybody in the country, really, or the world. But when you're doing a service base, it has to be for our case, the Chicagoland area. So how do you look at that differently versus if you're selling a barbecue sauce or a grill or a tool or something like that?
Well, I think the first thing to me is you have to go back to the why. Like, what is the purpose of doing this? Because if creating, video content in whatever genre you're in didn't serve a purpose, then we would cut that off of our to-do list, right? Because we got enough going on. Like, the last thing in the world, like, here's the deal, man. I'm a media guy. Like, I'm in my studio. I got lights. I got microphones. I got everything, right? The last thing in the world I want to do is step into the studio and shoot a bunch of content if it's not serving my business purpose, right? The way I get clients is video content. The way I work, and do my consulting service is video content. So that's the reason I cut it, because it makes me money. So we have to go back to, why are we doing this? Well, the reason a service-based brand needs to be shooting content, needs to be marketing the way we're marketing or we're encouraging them to market, is because you have to have a strong brand that's recognizable. And you have to stand out among a growing cohort, if you will, of other brands that are trying to market to your ideal client. So if you're not in front of them all the time and in a very recognizable way, you're going to fall by the wayside. Gary has this, Gary V. I say Gary like him and I are buddies. But Gary, we're all buddies with Gary, right? We all listen to him all the time.
Everybody does.
He's got
like
this,
a big brother concept to everybody.
100%, right? Just in your ear, chewing you out all the time. And you're like, I know. Yeah. But he's got this wonderful example that he gives of walking into a shoe store and saying no one goes into a shoe store and has to have them sell you a pair of Nikes. Right? You go into the shoe store because you're looking for Nikes. Because for 30 years, Nikes is marketed to you as this is the brand I'm going to do. So you don't walk. All the shoe salesman can do is screw the sale up. Right? He's the one who, have you talked about Reebok or let me talk about OnClouds? Or like if you go in there as a Nike fan, you're going in there to buy Nikes, right? And the reason being is because you know that brand. It's a strong brand that has an established presence that says exactly who it is and what they exist for. So, rule number one in any kind of service-based, now obviously Nike is a product-based, but services, if you build that brand, people will recognize you in the digital space for what that brand is and what that brand is not. And then the other thing that I would say with it is consistency is 100% the name of the game. And I mean consistency in posting, but I also mean consistency in your product and your product offerings, consistency in your messaging, consistency in the way that you present. Let me put it like this. If you saw let's just say a brisket video, right? And someone slices off, they're trimming a brisket and they slice and you see this unbelievable amount of marbling that's like crazy Wagyu marbling, right? There's only a handful of companies in the country that sell a product that a widely available brisket product that's crazy marbling, right? Like, okay, this is probably a 44 or a Creekstone or a Snake River or something like that. Why? Because every single thing we see from them looks the same. Right? If the marbling is their game, then that's what they show in their presentation and their product and their message. Everything is all about that, right? So in the style of video that you produce, it needs to be consistent because you don't want people guessing what video they're watching. There's a reason why you have hooks for videos and a lot of influencers and companies use the same hook in all their videos. Because the minute you hear that voice, the minute you hear that name, you have to associate that with your product. So the same kind of thing happens in a service-based industry. You have to make sure that you're completely consistent so that people recognize you. And the other thing you need to do is you need to call out what makes you different. And in service-based, you have other people in the area that are doing it. You have other catering companies in Chicagoland, thousands of catering companies in Chicagoland, right? So what are the ways that we can show you are different without bashing your competition? What do you do that the guy, and I'm a big fan of not bashing the competition. True, there's a place for it, and I every now and then I'll do it. Well, but I mean, honestly, that's a great example, right? Everyone, even in politics, I don't care if you are a rabid Harris fan or a rabid Trump fan, right? You're still probably sick of the negative bashing. Like even if you're like 100%, I'm for my person, whatever it is, right? The negativity at some point is just like, oh my gosh, can we just get over it and move on? Like, tell me why I should vote for you, not why the other person is the Antichrist, right? Yeah. It's the same thing in product advertising. Rather than saying our brisket is so much better than insert, Dickey's barbecue down the road or whatever. Like, show me why it's better. Show me what you do that's different, that sets you apart. Because what's going to happen is then when I see, to call them out, Dickey's barbecue down the road, I'm going to be like, well, but Deuce does his stuff different. Like, what makes this one really good then? Because I know what makes that one really good. So you go through this educational process, and it can be entertaining, right? But you go through this educational process of what makes you different. You can get creative in showing those differences. You can get funny, and this is where I'm a big fan of obviously scripting those things out. But you have to show the differences to the point where they themselves become a hook. Here's a great example. If anyone follows barbecue online, you more than likely know who Adam Perry Lang is, right?
Sure.
If you watch Adam Perry Lang's videos, you don't have to see his face at all. But if you see someone chopping ribs the way that Adam Perry Lang chops ribs, you know exactly who it is. It's this big old chopping block, right? And that rib's standing up on end, and he's hacking away. 90
Yep.
miles an hour with this cleaver, and those
Yep.
ribs are just falling like crazy, right? And all of us who, have worked in the barbecue, restaurant industry or whatever, we recognize that big old, hero plate of all the food, right? What's Adam's hero plate look like? It's 9 pounds of ribs piled up like this that he just douses with 5 gallons of sauce, and
Yeah.
he serves it to you, and you can't even see over the rack. Like, that's his thing, right?
Yeah.
And he's done a very good job in all of his videos. I don't know who produces his videos. I'm assuming it's somebody on his staff, but they've done a very good job of making it unbelievably consistent that when you see his video, you know exactly who it is. And it's the shock and awe of him doing, salmon collars, or he's got, 50 tomahawks on that big Weber Ranch kettle or whatever
Yep.
it is, right? Because that's his style, but it's consistent in who it is. So what he's done is he's set himself apart. This is why I'm different than the barbecue guy who's down the road who's like, hey, come buy some sliced brisket. It's like, why would I do that when I can see 25 tomahawks piled up and ribs that are, bigger than my face? And, Adam Perry Lang run around back there with a big old cleaver. Like, that's the sale, right? That's the product. So when you develop that style that's consistent with your brand voice, that's his brand voice, and you figure out what your brand voice is too. And you guys have done a really good job of this, Deuce. But in the educational, it's entertaining, but it's still educational.
Right.
It's very approachable for the backyard cook, but you also differentiate. This is why we do it for service, or this is why we do it for catering, or whatever it is, right? Whether your style is casual, formal, educational, avant-garde, snarky, whatever it is, right? Figure out what that brand voice is, and then just keep it consistent, 100% of the way through it.
And I tell people too is like being authentic to yourself. If you are, naturally
don't fake it.
snarky or naturally funny, it's like I have to come across who I am, because every time I
Right.
go on screen, I can't try to
Remember.
act like somebody else. Yeah, remember who am I supposed to be here? So
Right.
so you really got to figure out, who you are and just do you. So
Right.
some people are naturally funny or snarky or come off differently, but it is important to be consistent, and the easiest way to do that is be yourself.
Yeah, 100%. There's something entertaining about anyone's personality,
Sure.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you just have to figure out what the entertaining or educational, right? But you have to figure out what what makes people want to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then drill down on that. But, and I will say this, is kind of maybe a nice way to put a little bow on that is when you understand your brand and you take the time to say, all right, if I know who I'm trying to, sell to, if I know who my ideal client is, and I know what my brand voice is, I know it's me, right? I know what my content sounds like because I hear my voice in my head talking about my content. The most important thing you can do is script. And that sounds unbelievably boring to people. And I don't mean scripted out word for word, although there is a place, like a lot of my stuff I do use a teleprompter. It makes my content creation go that much faster. Can't do that when you're sitting out in a barbecue pit or in a kitchen or whatever. But when you script out the reason while you're doing the video and the things you want to highlight in the video, what it does is it allows you to steer your messaging rather than have your messaging steer you. Rather than being reactive and then just getting the video done and posting it online. It's like, well, I made something here, everyone watch it. Like, this video serves that purpose. And when you plug it in, that's how you start building that marketing strategy. These videos are my really educational or my really entertaining ones, right? My funny ones, the ones that everyone loves, and then they come down my funnel, and now they experience a little bit more about me, and they're a little bit more educational, right? And then they come down my funnel, and now they're hooked on me a little bit more, and now they start to get stuff that's a little more salesy. Well, as you work your way down that funnel, if you've scripted those things out, you know what every single one of those videos serves the purpose for, and it does take a little bit of time to do it, but then you're not just throwing mud at the wall. Right? You know that what you're doing actually will help you and will serve you because there's an intention behind it rather than just, we're going to do a video about cooking hamburgers today.
Can you talk a little bit about, I think a lot of guys understand, I won't say a lot of guys, I think some people understand why it's important to produce content, why they're talking about their product, but when it gets to the paid media side, there's a lot of confusion and a lot of not understanding. Can you talk about how to leverage paid advertising on Instagram, Facebook, some of those things, maybe in a broader term, because I know there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down to, but just to get someone the basic understanding of how to go about paid and what are the big levers to pull in paid.
Yeah, for sure. paid media, let's just take like Meta, for example, right? So the Facebook, Instagram, space, because TikTok and Google, they follow suit a little in different ways. TikTok follows suit, but it's more for small product sales. So you don't want to sell a seasoning. TikTok's a great way to do it. You're going to spend a lot of money on Meta selling a seasoning. Google is a great way, even for catering services. Google advertising is great because it's local based, right? It's like Google My Business type of stuff. But let's just take the Meta example. Paid media is an expensive endeavor. It used to not be. It is now. It's expensive because it's unbelievably effective. So go back to what I was saying about the newspaper thing before, right? If you advertise in a newspaper, one of the main reasons why someone used to put a coupon in a newspaper that you'd have to clip and bring out wasn't because they necessarily wanted to give you a deal. They did the coupon because they wanted to see how far was this piece of paid media, the fact that I bought this newspaper, ad, how far is that ad reaching? How many people, how many sales am I going to get as a result of that ad? So the only thing you could do is at the end of the day, you'd open up the register and you'd count the coupons and you'd be like, well, today that ad sold us, 12 widgets or whatever it is. Paid media now is with the way that pixels and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole and everything work, but essentially it tracks people around the internet, and it tracks them to the point where you can see anonymized, but you can see how many people clicked on your link, came to your website, where they went on your website, did they initiate a checkout, did they complete a purchase, did they abandon a cart, did they do this whole thing. There is data now behind paid media, and that data makes it unbelievably effective for you to now, when you go buy paid media, know how much money you're spending and know what your returns are. As that's become more and more effective and the algorithm has become more and more effective, paid media like Meta stuff has gotten a lot more expensive because it's become way more beneficial. So, to your point, the reason social media is free and has been quote unquote free from the beginning is because we are the people that are being advertised to. We are the product that is being sold. When I go buy, which I do buy, thousands of dollars a month of paid media personally on my behalf. When I go buy that, I am buying viewers from Facebook, from Instagram, from whatever, in hopes that some of those people may become clients of mine. Right. The number one way you can make your paid media more effective is by making sure your messaging and your targeting is unbelievably clear. And what I mean by that is this, and I'm going to use myself because I think this is a really good example. I have certain people that follow me on Instagram, certain people that follow me on Facebook. Most of them are in and around the business and or barbecue space. So I have a lot of barbecue guys around there, right? But when I cut an ad and I say, hey, I'm a marketer, I'm a content creator, I'm a media buyer, in the barbecue space, I don't say, hey, do you like barbecue and need marketing services? Come hit me up. Now, I probably could, and who knows, that may be a more effective ad than what I'm running right now. But if you see my ads, you're going to hear me say, are you a barbecue manufacturer in the United States who does X, Y, and Z, and you have problems with X, Y, and Z? And the reason I do that is because I am not going to pay for people to click on my ads if I do not want them to click on my ads. So for the guy who's like, I have nothing to do with barbecue, he's not going to click on my ad. Sweet, I didn't have to pay for that click, right? Because everything's an auction. You pay for all of this. So when you get unbelievably specific with your messaging and who you're trying to talk to, you go back to that avatar, that Mike Smith in San Diego who makes $140K a year. When you can talk to that guy, your paid media goes significantly further because you actually have an action plan associated with your paid media. So in our world, what we call that is creative targeting. We use the creative, the video, or the copy, the written thing behind the ad. We use that to target our ideal clients. And what it does is it shoves away anybody else who's not our ideal client, and it makes our money go further when we buy paid media. So if you're buying, say you're a barbecue restaurant, and you're like, well, I keep boosting posts on Facebook, and I'm not getting anything on them, right? I spent $150 on that post on Facebook, and it didn't give me anything. Well, let's reverse engineer that. What was that post? Well, that post was, hey, it's Thursday, we have brisket today, come buy it. Okay, well, you just sent that post to 50,000 people. Realistically, there's only about 1,500 who are in your immediate area who would have ever come and gotten brisket from you, right? Unless you're only buying paid media for that Tuesday that you ran that brisket special, then you're advertising a brisket special that has been over for 3 or 4 or 5 days. your ad has not been shown long enough to enough people to even figure out who wants brisket on Tuesday, because you launched it at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, and it's going to take 5 days for that ad to learn who you're talking to, right? So I can go down the rabbit hole on that. But my point being is your ads are ineffective because you're not using advertising the way it's supposed to be. So the much more effective way would be in August, you're going to start building out and designing ads that are going to start running 2 weeks before September, and September is brisket month, and every day in September, we're going to have brisket. And now you're going to target those ads to a 10-mile radius of your barbecue restaurant, right? And you're going to put a call to action on those ads. Mention that you saw this ad and you're going to get 10% off or whatever it is. You're going to go down the rabbit hole of trying to tailor that ad to the specific people that want to see brisket. And your ad is going to go significantly further. But if you're not using advertising correctly, you're just wasting your money.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people do. They try it out. They're not knowing what they're doing. They spend a few hundred or even a couple thousand, and then they just say it doesn't work. When you really have to put the time and attention to it, everything you were just explaining, and I just don't think a lot of people do it properly, you know.
No, and Facebook makes it so easy. Boost post, right?
Yeah.
And you don't even think about the fact that you just boosted a post that has zero call to action. Like you're just hoping that someone sees your name and they're like, oh, I'm going to go shut. No, like if your post doesn't, I'll tell you this, here's a hill I'll die on. If your post does not have a call to action, if your post that is meant to make you money, that is is a sales post, is not a, hey, fun, everyone's doing a TikTok dance in the front of the restaurant. If it's a sales post, come buy this product, we're selling, whatever it is. If it does not have a clear to call to action, don't even post it. Because the whole point is for people to respond to your call to action. If your ad does not have a clear call to action, delete the ad right now. Kill the ad set. It has to have a clear call to action because people need to know what steps you want them to take if they're actually going to buy from you.
Yeah. Well, I hope everybody listening that wants to promote a product or a service is listening intently on that, because I know personally our company has wasted money on paid media because we're not targeting a specific enough audience too. Talk a little bit how you can target the exact person you want on Meta.
Sure. So the algorithm has gotten unbelievably smart when it comes to targeting, where you don't necessarily have to go out and say, I have to have someone who's got these 75 deep hobbies, right? The first way you target, as we've talked about before, is our messaging and our creative. So make sure that your creative and your messaging calls out who those people are. When it actually comes down to the back end targeting, you need to be thinking a little bit differently about how you're building your audiences in Meta. So here, pull behind the curtain, the way you do this in Meta is you don't necessarily go launch your ad and then pick your targeting. You go build your audience, and then you launch your ad and you tell your ad what audience you want to advertise to. And if you look at my personal audience, I probably have 150, 200 different audiences built. And I run different ads to different people, retargeting ads, regular ads, top of funnel, middle funnel ads, all that kind of stuff. Once again, I'm an ad buyer. This is what we do, right? But when you build those audiences, you need to start reverse engineering who these people are. So, Deuce, let's take the example of if you were trying to advertise your $10,000 catering service, right? You want to sell the big boy. Who are the kinds of people that would buy that? Well, we talked about before. Okay, maybe people in medical offices or industrial offices or whatever. Okay, who typically books catering?
Administrative assistants.
That's exactly where I'm going, right?
Like
Who books caterings? HR directors, HR managers, administrative, executive assistants. They're the ones. It's not the CEO of the company who doesn't call for catering quote. You know, he's got his secretary, his executive assistant, whoever. So, and then the other way you can do it, you know, based on businesses, is the person who is going to book your services or buy your product, are they a decision maker in a company? Because if they are, you can actually filter down by decision makers based on their job titles, right? So it could be an owner operator, it could be a president, it could be a vice president, it could be someone in the C level. Take that maybe even a little bit wider. What types of people are in full control of their Facebook pages? Because you can actually filter by administrators of business Facebook pages. Really? Because now you don't have 50 people who are, you know, an admin of the page. You probably got, you know, it might be the marketing director. It's a great way if you're targeting marketing people. The marketing director's got, you know, access to the Facebook page. If it's a smaller company, it's probably the owner and his executive assistant. It may be the wife of the, whatever it is, right? So you start reverse engineering the types of people who you truly want to see those ads. And then now you can filter out into the, okay, and it's also in the manufacturing space, it's in the automotive space, it's in the medical space, it's in the whatever, right? And those are all these, you know, the high targeting is really what you want to see, and then you narrow your filter down. realistically, broad targeting is not a bad thing to do if you have your creative done correctly, because the algorithm is going to steer it in the right way, because people aren't going to watch it if it's not important. But there's not a problem building a tighter audience. The one thing I will caution you is don't build your audience too tight, because it's a lot easier to just pay the extra money to have a few extra people see your ad that are not going to see it, would normally not see it, than for it to be so broad that you accidentally miss that one job position, that one person, that one industry who really would have given you the business, and you just accidentally forgot to put them in the audience. So I typically try to stay a little broader, but I make sure that my top parameters are ones that I'm like, this fulfills 100% of every single person I want to see my ad meets these characteristics. And then down below, it's like, these are kind of the wish list, but they're not, the set in stones.
How do you kind of test it out to see how much you need to spend to really get the exposure and some of the results you need? Do you spend $300 or $3,000 or $5,000? Like, how do you kind of figure that out?
A lot of that depends on the product that you're offering. So if you're offering a $10,000 catering service, well, then you need to factor in what percentage of the people that I'm going to put this ad out to do I need to get a return on my investment. So if I'm going to sell a $10,000 catering service, I definitely don't want to spend $10,000 advertising it and get a one ROAS, because that's a wash, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if I sell 10 $10,000 catering services, it's 100% worth it for me to spend $10,000 on that ad, right? So you have to look at the cost of the product, and then you just have to be fluid enough to be able to look at your data and figure out, what's my data telling me? What's my cost per result? How many people are seeing it? If it's a video ad, how are people falling off at 25%, 50%, 75%, and being real smart, because I don't release one ad. I release 10, 15, 20, 25, 35 ads every single time I launch ads. And then I let those ads run, and all those are running at a high dollar a day. And a lot of times it's $20, $25, $35 a day. So you're talking $1,500, $2,500, $3,500 a month on some of those ads. So what I'll do is I'll build one campaign with a purpose on that campaign. So maybe it's to sell my $10,000 catering service. And then within that campaign, I set a budget in that campaign. So this month I'm going to budget $5,000 in ads. And then I build my ad sets under that campaign. And this part of the campaign is all my retargeting. This part of the campaign is people who've never been exposed to me before. This part of the campaign is people who've engaged with me in the last 90 days. And you start building your ad sets from there. And then as you watch your data, I make very quick decisions. So within 2 or 3 days, I know what ads I need to kill and which ones I need to bump. And then if I kill 4 ads, I reiterate and I launch another 2 or 3 until I narrow down and narrow down and narrow down until I have winners. It sounds unbelievably complicated. It can be. It doesn't have to be. A lot of businesses are going like, man, I'm not an ad buyer. That's why, correct. That's why I have a job. And businesses are going like, I'm not an ad buyer. I'm not saying you have to go down that route, but when you go down that route that deep, it's kind of like someone day trading. Like someone could just have a financial advisor and they know they have stocks. They just don't even know what they are. That's me, right? Yeah. Like I got a guy, he calls me a couple times a year. He's like, hey, we have a couple decisions to make. Great. But there's also the guys who nerd out and they have 15 screens and they want to be clicking, every single day and making changes. That's not me. But you can get nerdy with it or you don't have to get nerdy with it. But I will say, like at the very top level, you need to be running a couple different versions of your ads. And I'll say, if you want to run your own ads, here's ad 101. Come up with 2 messages and 3 creatives. 2 copies and 3 creatives, 3 videos, whatever it is. Run them all at the same time. Make a decision within the first 2 or 3 days which 1 or 2 you're going to kill. And then the ones that survive, what do they have in common? Did they have the same video? Did they have the same ad copy? If they did, then take that ad copy and put new videos on it and reiterate your video. So what you basically do is you narrow down until you figure out, hey, people like what I wrote here. Hey, people like the hook on that video. Hey, people like every single time I do a hamburger video, everyone watches it like crazy and clicks through and buys my barbecue seasoning. Yeah. But every single time I do a salad, I get no interaction. Okay, then stop advertising salads.
Correct.
Right? Like, it's not hard. But you have to use the data. And again, that's why people like me have a job. But at the end of the day, just watch the data and make smart decisions with it. Like, don't be afraid to kill things that aren't working. Don't be afraid to stop wasting money. But also know that it is an investment. And on the learning side of it, it's a higher investment. I spend half now of when I originally launched our agency, my advertising budget has been cut in half. And that's not because we're tighter. We make more money now than we launched the agency. But I do that because my ads have gotten a lot smarter. So I don't have to spend as much money making them, making them go as far. Now, if I launched a completely new product, completely new target audience, whatever it is, that ad budget's now going to have to go up because I can't use the same amount of data to sell this product that I did to sell that product. So at some point, you kind of got to be a little bit flexible with it.
Do you think there's any easier or harder kind of thing to sell online? Like, I look at it like, is it easier just to sell like a product like rubs and sauces versus like a cooking class or catering or something like that? Is it easier just to sell the products versus service-based industry, or, like I said, a class or something else? Is there anything that stands out to you that way?
So I look at a couple different things. I look at the longevity of a product, so lifetime value, like we talked about before. And I looked at the average cost of that product and what it's going to cost me to reach enough people to buy that product. So if that bottle of barbecue seasoning is a $10 price point and my cost on that product is probably $3.50, $4 maybe, right? So I have $6 to play with before I just break even on it. $6 does not buy me a lot of views online, right? In order to sell that barbecue product. So I look at it as though, take someone like yourself, Deuce, if you guys have a catering company, but you also offer, live events and classes, and you also have a line of seasonings and sauces. Your catering stuff has the largest lifetime value. And anyone who's got a catering company who, you can get repeat customers, you have a longer lifetime value. So the first and foremost, I would build an audience based on people and advertise initially the people who can fulfill that lifetime value. Who's my ideal clientele in that world, right? Once you build that audience, once you advertise to them and the people that are responding, that are commenting, the jobs you're getting, that you've actually tailored your audience and they're warmed up to you, now you can sell them your barbecue classes or your cooking classes or whatever it is. So now you retarget those people. So you started advertising into 2.8 million. Now realistically, you have an engaged audience of 150,000. Now, out of that 150,000, you retarget them with your barbecue classes. And the problem with the barbecue classes is it's an event-based thing on a date. So you have to run advertising up to it. And then if you don't have something immediately, like that ad campaign dies. So events are real hard to advertise to unless you're doing hyper-local with them. But you can go a lot further when you retarget the audience that you already have warmed because they know who you are from a catering perspective. And then you can also retarget your barbecue products, but you have a narrower audience because you know that they have an affinity to the type of cooking you do, the educational content you put out, whatever it is, right? If you were to just take a barbecue seasoning and throw it out there into the ether with zero following, that's probably one of the most expensive ways to advertise. And I say that as a company who advertises for multiple companies that do that. They have barbecue sauce lines and seasoning lines. But they're also aware of the fact, like, this is just the cost of the beast. And they sell on Amazon and they sell on TikTok and they have all these other revenue streams. And the way that we build the brand awareness on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is we also advertise in those spaces. And the cost per result is a lot higher on small ticket items than it is on large ticket items. So if you're sub $100 on your item, your cost per result is always going to be higher. That's just, you have to get it in front of X number of people for them to buy from you. So not saying it's bad to advertise small ticket items, but just know it's going to, until you really identify who your key people are and your ads really start to gain steam, you are throwing a lot of money into what feels like a black hole. So you have to have some kind of longevity and you got to have, some kind of, gut with you, because it's going to take a while to see your return on that. It's doable. I mean, there's people out there that all of us follow, that all of us know, and they are making money in advertising products like that online. But a lot of those guys either had investors or a nest egg or something where they're like, I'm going to lose money for 6 months before I start seeing money, and I'm okay doing it because I know the long run is going to happen.
Nick, you are a plethora of information, and it's really cool that our paths cross, because I just feel like there's so much I can learn from you, and I hope the people listening today really took notes, because it was very informative. Even for us, I think people look at us as somewhat successful online and gathered a following and stuff like that, but we still have a lot to learn in the space, and it's just very, very cool to be able to bounce ideas off you and everything. So if people are interested in your services, where can they find you, and how can they hook up with you?
Sure. So easiest way is probably just shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's at Nick Cooks BBQ. And then our agency is called Forge Fire Creative. We also work outside of the barbecue industry with farms and ranches, so kind of what we like to call farm to fire, if you will. And so if you go on our agency page, which is at Forge Fire Creative on Instagram, you'll see some farm stuff on there too. That's still us. But yeah, those are the two places. And I mean, you can do email or website, but honestly, we live on Instagram these days.
Nice. And
Yep.
do those farms, can you buy like half and quarter cows that are organically raised and stuff like that? That's what my
Yep.
wife wants.
Absolutely, and I can put people into, like, if you're just looking for farms in your area, like, feel free to shoot me a DM. I can put you in touch with people. But we work with we work with people who do shares, which is what you're talking about, quarters, halves, wholes, and then we work with people who are doing direct to consumer and developing direct to consumer programs where they not just sell locally and get up every Saturday and go to the farmers market, but they're actually packing, dry icing, shipping across the country.
Yeah.
So we work with them on their e-com strategies for that, on their marketing strategies for that, to try to get their small farm products from wherever they're located across the country and give people an alternative to just going down to the local Walmart and supporting the big three industries that in a lot of ways are hurting the industry more than anything else.
Very cool. Man, you did an awesome job answering all the questions.
Hopefully something sticks and it's not just all a bunch of junk, but hopefully people get out of it.
The part that I get frustrated with, and this is just being candidly, is like it's such a learning curve when you're talking about the paid ads and what's actually going to work. We went down a rabbit hole with a couple different companies, and we'd get people to respond, but it was only if we were running some like sign up for this and you get this, then we would get some interaction and stuff like that. But I haven't seen a lot of success with paid ads where it's like, okay, we spent $1,000 and we got 1,001 in return. I haven't had that experience.
Yeah, and a lot of agencies, well, and I get it because it's the lowest hanging fruit. A lot of agencies will say, well, the reason that's happening is because your prices are too high. You need to come up with a better promotion. You need to lower the cost. You need to, which, I mean, that's a great way to do it. If you got the margin to do it, I mean, wonderful. But getting a good usable lead in it can definitely be difficult for people, and it's a lot of trial and error. And time and energy. And I mean, like I said, that's why people like me and your marketing crew and stuff exist, because we have to spend hours and days and, late nights lying in bed thinking how we can get a result for our client that doesn't put you, in bankruptcy before you end up seeing $1.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, Nick. Well, we always wrap up with a little lightning round, so this is just fun. I'm going to list a phrase, a question, and you're just going to give me the first thing off the top of your head.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. Favorite barbecue sauce flavor?
Blues Hog Smoky Mountain.
Nice. Go-to grill for the backyard barbecue?
That's a hard one, man. All-around grill, go-to grill, probably going to have to say... I mean, I'm a Santa Maria guy, but that's just so generic. For the average person who can just go buy something, Weber Kettle can't be beat.
Agreed. Barbecue rub or marinade?
Rub.
What's your most Instagrammable barbecue dish?
Most Instagram, like that I've done that's performed well on Instagram or something?
Or you could pick anybody else's. The most Instagrammable barbecue dish you've seen on social media or made yourself?
Most Instagrammable barbecue dish. Oh man, that's super hard. There's a couple things that stand out, but anything with unbelievably gooey cheese pulls is normally.
Why is that so appealing to people?
I don't. But even us.
It
right?
is.
Like,
I'm not saying it's not,
it.
but it's like, dude, one dude, he does it all the time. I can't remember. Burnt something barbecue, and he's got like 28 million views on this like pulled pork taco with just like opening the tortilla. It's crazy.
I mean, one of my most popular Instagram like real quickie reels was I took this big wheel of brie cheese and I wrapped it in prosciutto, and I just smoked it until you knew it was like liquid, and
Yeah.
I cut into it, and then I just infiltrated over the top of it some like 1970s porno music as it was like just oozing out all over the cutting board, and it just
Oh my
got
God.
miles of traction.
Too much. Favorite barbecue trend right now?
Favorite barbecue trend right now. Can I tell you my least favorite barbecue trend right now is birria
do it.
tacos.
Oh yeah,
And I like birria, but like you can't birria everything, guys.
yeah. It's birria bombs and birria everything.
I'm telling you, man. Favorite barbecue trend. I don't know if it's right now, but I'm a fan of the what do they call them? The hamburger tacos where they're doing like the smash burger with a tortilla and then they're flipping it and frying it. Like those are pretty dang good.
Yeah.
I think that's probably like a year old though. These days I don't go down the rabbit hole of barbecue recipes anymore because I'm too busy trying to make money for people rather than create barbecue
You got a
content.
lot
But
going on for sure.
every now and then something catches my eye, man.
All right.
I will give a shout out to this just because it's good. If you're not following Jort's Kitchen online, dude, that guy makes some beautiful content.
George Kitchen.
Jort's, Jorts, Jort's Kitchen.
I'm gonna look him up when we're done.
I promise you've seen him. You probably just didn't know
Yeah.
you'd seen him. But
Yeah, I probably
but he
found
comes
him
he
already.
comes out with some amazing stuff, man.
Ultimate barbecue collab. If you could team up with any chef or pitmaster or influencer in barbecue, who would it be?
I'd be hard pressed to say not Adam Perry Lang, but I will say a good buddy of mine who I've hung out with a million times but never got like a full day to cook with would be Al Fragoni. I'd love
Okay.
to just go sweat my butt off and cook a bunch of live fire with Al.
That's awesome.
And he'll call me and be like, "Bro, come on down." I was like, "I know, man. We're always moving in different directions."
Okay, here's a fun one. What's the most underrated barbecue tool?
Underrated barbecue tool. Overrated is going to be bear claws because if you have to shred your meat with bear claws, you didn't cook
That's
your meat
even
long
better.
enough.
Yeah, I agree.
Underrated barbecue tool. I mean, it's low hanging fruit, man. But I'm going to say an instant read thermometer. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't have one of those in your kitchen, like you're missing out.
100%. It makes everything so much easier and takes the guesswork out of it, and
Yep.
that's a game changer. If you go from not having one to having one, it's like game change. for
I mean,
sure.
it's night and day. It's like you went to college and like came out with an education.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
All right, last one. It's kind of weird. You could just come up with your favorite dish, but favorite barbecue dish you would make if you were at a food festival, music festival.
Like to
Barbecue
serve
dish you
to
would
to serve to a crowd.
Yep.
It would probably be like a tri-tip crostini with like a chimichurri and some kind of vinegary slaw or something. A little bit of
Yeah.
acid with the oil. Just like small bites, though.
I made tri-tip this weekend at my house, and it's just, if you do it slow enough so it's soft, if you cook tri-tip too fast, it'll get tough. But if
Oh, it
you cook it,
seasons. Yep.
if you cook it slow and then sear it at the end, it's awesome.
It's
So
hard to beat.
good. Yeah,
I sous vide almost all my tri-tip.
really,
So
that's smart.
Yep. I season them up. I unbag them. I season them up. I re-vac seal them, and then I throw them in a. And I do that, man. I'll do this if I'm catering. You know, I'll be cooking 100 tri-tips. I'm still going to sous vide 100 tri-tips, and then I'll chill them again because it gives me all the playing room. Now you're not putting something slightly warm on the grill, but I'll chill them again, and then you get all that wood smoke and that fire, and you basically spend that 45 minutes to an hour building bark rather than trying to get the inside cooked.
Yeah.
And then that way I can pull them at 125 degrees.
Yep.
Maybe 130 degrees, and I know there's no risk of that thing, being overcooked or anything. But I've got all that bark and that char. But
What do you
it's
set
had
the
all those
sous vide
fiber.
at?
131 for no longer than 6 hours.
Okay. Awesome. I'd have to check that out because, like, I cooked one low, like 220 degrees
Yep.
on the Weber sear wood, and I don't know how long it took, maybe an hour and a half or something like that. Just brought it to like 120, and then I seared it over charcoal, and it was,
Yep.
it was so good. Let it
Yeah.
rest. Yeah.
I found that if I go over 6 hours on the sous vide, it'll get a little mealy, a little too tender, kind of like a fillet
yeah.
that's, wanting to fall apart.
Yep.
And honestly, man, I don't sous vide hardly anything. I'll use a sous vide to warm things back up. to make sure that
That's
I'm cooking
a
it.
good
Or
way to do it. Yep.
or if I don't have, if I'm running around, I'm like, I got to have dinner ready at 5 and I've got, I got to reheat something, and I can just throw it in there for 5 hours and let it sous vide and just hold temp. Like, I'll do that. But the sous vide can be so overrated. People are out there like sous vide and fillets, and I'm like, it's already the most tender cut of beef out there. Like, the whole point of sous vide is to make something tender.
Yeah.
So the tri-tip is great because it's got all that intermuscular stuff that needs to be broken down, and over time it just allows it to break it down. So it really does make a fillet-like texture on tri-tip, but yet you can get that outside bark. And I very rarely do I even cut the fat cap down because I like the char on it. So it's great, man. It's probably my favorite kind
I
of
got
beef.
to trim it up for everybody else, but I like it. Do you have family? Do you have kids?
Do I have family or kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have 3 girls, wife and 3 girls, and then female dog and female cats, and it's ridiculous. It's a farm
like me.
barn. It's a zoo, man. I'm surrounded by estrogen ocean.
Yeah, I'm the same.
yeah.
We don't have a cat. We have 3 girls, my wife, and a girl dog too.
Yeah, I inherited a barn cat about. I say inherited because she showed up at the house, and then my girls were like, "Oh my gosh!" And then turns out she was pregnant. So like my worst nightmares, and I hate cats. I'm allergic to them. So luckily the cats live outside. But now my entire outdoor kitchen is just covered in cat hair, and I have to go out there with a blower every single time I want to use anything.
Blow the cats away too. Probably. Awesome. Hey man, well this conversation has been awesome. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll talk more in the future, but this has been really, really good. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys later.
Nick. All right.